Hey there all, my name is Liz Wright and I am a psychology faculty member at Northwest Vista College in San Antonio, Texas. And this video is part of a series for my child psychology class. In this particular video, we're going to be talking about social and emotional and personality development in our 2 to 6-year-olds. So early childhood development and social, emotional, and personality stuff. Um, so there's a lot of, and I always say this if you've watched my videos, there's a lot of interesting things going on during this time period. So our 2 to 6-year-olds, they are learning how to be capable of doing stuff on their own. They are learning some self-confidence. They are also learning what goes into their self-concept. And most of the time at this age group, the self-concept, or what we know about the self or what we believe about the self, is mostly related to things that we, how we look. So I'm a girl, I have blonde hair, I have blue eyes, I'm tall, I'm short. Um, and then as they get a little bit older, they might have learned from their peers, from their parents, that they're considered a nice person or that they're considered a smart person, things like that. And so they might start to integrate those sorts of ideas about themselves. But generally, the initial descriptions that they give people about the self-concept are more related to the physical. Got dogs going on in here. Hold on. Too many dogs. Hey, guys, go, 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 go. So their descriptions of themselves will be more related to physical concepts as opposed to cognitions or thoughts. Okay, got rid of the dogs. So this unit also looks at parenting and parenting styles and how parenting styles influence the development of our 2 to 6-year-olds. So when we're talking about parenting styles, we're really talking about how do the parents interact with the children, but also how do the parents kind of manage the behaviors of the children. So we think about in terms of different types of parenting. We think about warmth versus kind of coldness. We think about restrictions as opposed to being less restrictive. So we can develop multiple ideas of what we call parenting styles from combining those two things. So we can talk about authoritative parenting, authoritative with a V, is the type of parenting where parents might use inductive discipline or inductive reasoning with their children when they say things such as, we don't do that because of this. So rather than simply saying no, we explain why, because it might hurt somebody else, because you might get hurt, because, we don't throw things in the house because we might break a window, things like that. And then these parents are also high in the warmth category. So they are the parents that are maybe, hugging on their children a lot, or, touching them as they walk by, patting them on the head, things like that. We can talk about authoritarian parenting. These folks are low in warmth and high in expectations of behavior. These are the types of parents that usually will say things like, because I said so. And there's no inductive discussion as to why. It is simply the expectation is there that I said you do. That's how this works. Authoritarian parents, if you think about authoritarian governments, very similar. They tell you what to do. They have very high expectations for you. And they expect that what they've said will be followed through on. They don't expect that there will be any sort of discussion surrounding it. They don't expect that the child will, forget to do what they told them to do. They expect that, I say, you do, and that's how this works. Then we can talk about permissive parenting. Some people also call this indulgent parenting. It's high in warmth and low in expectations. So these are parents that will, kind of allow their kids to do whatever, learn from their own mistakes, maybe not punish them because they think that the experience was punishment enough. Um, they may, if they're financially capable, give their children lots of things and not expect much in terms of the child's behavior. So, I sometimes tell students that, the permissive, indulgent parents are the ones that are allowing the teenagers to come over their house and drink alcohol just as long as they're not driving afterwards, even though, that's against the law. And then we can also talk about rejecting or neglecting parenting. And, sometimes people say, well, this isn't really parenting at all. And it's like, well, they're rejective or neglecting parents are typically low in warmth, but also low in expectations. They are not the parents that a child feels comfortable going to when they have a difficulty or a challenge, because they don't expect that their parent's going to do anything about it. Their parent may or may not be there, cognitively, emotionally, physically for them. And so these children may feel that, their parents are not someone that they can go to with questions or concerns or challenges, because they don't feel like they're supported. These parents typically also don't indicate any levels of expectations or high levels of expectations for their children's behaviors. They may or may not be responsive when their children get in trouble at school, or are having difficulties with their peers or things like that. We also can talk about, in this unit, they talked about siblings. So what happens if the child that we have gets a sibling? So we have another child, what might happen? So a child that is, 5 or 6 years old and now has a sibling, we can encourage them to positively interact with their sibling. But they may, because of the fact that they've been an only child for a while, they may regress in terms of their behaviors, which is pretty typical. They may start talking in a baby voice. They may become more kind of high maintenance, like they want more attention because the fact that they recognize that the baby's getting more attention than they are. So regression in terms of behaviors may occur if we bring another child into the family mix. This chapter also talks about what can happen in terms of a change in family dynamics. So obviously having a sibling, having a new baby would influence a change in family dynamics. If a couple isn't married and one of the couple leaves, so if they had two parents and now they only have one, either due to separation, divorce, that can influence acting out behaviors. Many female children will internalize their acting out behaviors. They will think to themselves that maybe they did something wrong that caused the other parent to not be there anymore. And they'll try to bargain with the parent that they continue to have, and they'll say, I'm sorry for what I did. If, mom or dad comes back, I'll be better, etc. They may also, males may externalize the behavior, so they may act out at school. The parent who has custody of the children, who is taking care of the children, may get more phone calls from school about the child acting aggressively verbally or aggressively physically. And both of these kids are really having challenges with dealing with the emotions associated with the potential loss of this other person, that they didn't realize that the loss of the other person was a possibility, if that makes sense. So they may blame themselves They may try to bargain and say that they change their behavior. They may act out, they may internalize and start thinking that it's their personal fault that these things happened. Um, a lot of people talk about how, divorce can negatively impact children. We also want to think about how if the household with two adults who were not getting along, or two adults maybe who were abusive towards each other, or an adult who was abusive towards another adult, um, think about how living in that situation might have influenced the child. And we may recognize that having the parents separate or the caregiver separate may actually be beneficial in the long term for the child's development, because of the fact that they're no longer seeing this behavior that was negative modeled for them by the parent who they're no longer living with. Um, and so there may be some benefits to the dissolution of a relationship between two parents, especially if the relationship was chaotic or abusive, so that we can help the children start to heal and deal with their experiences of living in a situation like that. Um, this time period is where a lot of kids start to move from either the daycare or the home-based situation into the school-based situation. So we may be going to pre-K, we may be going to kindergarten. By age 6, in the United States, most children are in first grade. Um, so peers start to become a lot more important. The older children in this age group start to recognize that there is kind of this social status within peer groups, and they recognize, they have an understanding of where they are in the social status. They recognize maybe that other people have friends and they don't, or they recognize that they have friends. Some of them say that everyone is their friend. Some of them say that, I don't have any friends whatsoever at school. So peers and acceptance of peers and being part of a peer group becomes more important towards the end of this age group. And we will see when we move into middle childhood that it's going to be even more important. And sometimes peers will become more influential than parents because they maybe spend more time with their peers. They recognize that their caregivers are going to love them, regardless of if they fit in and do what's expected of them in terms of their peer group. So if my parents are always, or my caregivers are always going to love me, then I have to, or maybe I feel like I have to kind of put on a show or a mask or a front for my peers so that I fit into the peer group. And so we may see that the older these children get, the more they conform to the social norms of their peer groups so that they feel that they fit in. And as we move into adolescence, fitting in becomes much more important. And we will see that, children start to conform to behaviors that may or may not be beneficial for them. Um, Even in this young of an age group, we can see the start of um, bullying, of treating other children negatively in order to gain social status, in order to feel powerful as the child who is treating other children badly. Um, and one of the big questions here becomes, what's the difference between teasing and bullying? And there's been a lot of discussion of this within my friend group recently, because my best friend's daughter was experiencing some behaviors in her classroom, in her first grade classroom, that she observed as bullying, and the school said, well, we observe that the personalities in this group of children are very different. There's some strong ones, and that, the stronger personalities tend to dominate the classroom situation. But it doesn't appear that any actual bullying is going on. But if you look into the definition of bullying, and this brings us into the topic of aggression with this age group as well. One of the things that we do see is that relational aggression, which is using aggression, and aggression can be defined as something that is done to intentionally hurt somebody else. So relational aggression may be telling other kids not to talk to so-and-so, telling other kids that they won't be friends with them if they're friends with so-and-so. These are all examples of relational aggression, which is a type of bullying. And so we, as I said, even are starting to see this in first grade peer groups. And so we need to address it and start talking about with children friendship. What does friendship mean? How does a friend behave? What does a good friend do? Is that really a friend type behavior, or is it more of someone who maybe treats us nicely sometimes so they can get something out of us? So more of a manipulative type behavior as opposed to an actual friend. And it can be really hard, especially for kids that want to be friends with everyone. It can be really hard for them to recognize that this person or these other children are really actually, manipulating me to get me to behave in the way that they want me to behave, to give them candy or to bring them gifts or to do things like that so that they will continue to be my friend. That's not friendship, y'all, right? But it can be, like I said, it can be really hard for first graders, sixth graders, or 6-year-olds to understand that these other kids are really just manipulating them into giving them things with the promise of friendship, which is the goal for all of these little kids, right? When really they're not actually intending to be friends with the child, they're just manipulating them, which again is a form of bullying. We do see that these children are starting to learn altruism. So it's not all bad. These children can start to learn how to help others with no expectation of receiving anything in return. They can, parents can demonstrate volunteering, can demonstrate helping others. Schools can demonstrate this as well and help the children to learn to develop that as part of their identity, as part of their personality, that they are a helper, that they are an individual who doesn't keep this, tit for tat mentality of, well, I helped so and so once, so now they have to help me, or it's not equal. So we do see the development of altruism, of helping with no expectation of return. We do, as I said before, see some aggressive behaviors during this time period, especially if children have challenges with emotional vocabulary, explaining to others how they're feeling, that they're frustrated, why they're frustrated. Then children might be more likely to act out in a physical manner because they don't know how to explain themselves. So helping children to develop an emotional vocabulary and to identify feelings in themselves, but also feelings in others, can start to develop empathy or the ability to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Um, and really think about how would they feel, or how might this other person feel, how would I feel if someone did that to me. So I don't want to do that to them because I don't want them to feel this way that I would feel, if that makes sense. And this does take some cognitive development, so we don't expect our 2-year-olds to be able to empathize. But as they get older, then they are more capable of empathy as their cognitive abilities increase. We do see sex differences in play type behavior. Girls are more likely to play in terms of social play, where they play social roles. There's expectations of, let's play house. I'll be the mommy, you be the daddy, things like that. Um, Boys tend to play more physical and interactive games, whereas girls tend to play more um, games that are, I guess you could say, quiet and social. Um, and this may be one of the reasons why people say that, boys of this age group are more rambunctious than girls of this age group are. Can girls be rambunctious? Of course they can. They can get excited and run around and scream and yell and play tag and push each other down and all that sort of stuff. But the gender stereotype is that more male children will be doing those behaviors than female children will be doing those behaviors. We do see that more male to male play is more aggressive than and physically aggressive than female to female play is. And towards the end of this time period, so towards 5, 6, we do see some gender specific play, meaning that they do start to play more intentionally with their own sex as opposed to playing with all kids. So, our 3 or 4 year olds may just play with everybody, whereas our 6 year olds may be like, there's girl groups and boy groups, and you're a boy, so you have to go play with the boy groups. These guys also, or these little people, I always think my brain always says these guys, but it's not obviously that they're all guys, right? So these little folks are starting to understand sex role concepts and gender socialization and expectations. So your 6 year old may say things like, well, boys can't do that, or girls can't do that. And it's like, hold on. As adults, we know that, anybody can pretty much do anything aside from some biological features. Um, and so as adults, we may say, what do you mean a girl can't be a scientist? Or what do you mean a boy can't be a stay-at-home parent or something like that? But these guys are very much kind of being taught by society that, boy things, girl things, you're a girl. These are the things that you do. These are the social expectations that go along with your gender. They also, around 5 or 6, will start to understand what we call gender stability. I remember Sage, my youngest, said multiple times to me when he was like 3 or 4, when I grow up, I want to be a mommy like you. And so that told me that he doesn't understand the idea of gender stability, that you're not going to just wake up one day and be the other gender or be the other sex. So small children will, 2, 3 year olds will think that it's possible that I might just wake up tomorrow a boy. Whereas our older children recognize that gender is stable, and that they are not just going to wake up and be the opposite gender tomorrow. Um, they also, as they get older, start to understand that even if people change their features, that doesn't change their gender. It doesn't mean that a boy who grows long hair is now a girl, although peer groups may chastise boys who grow long hair. Because again, we come back to this idea of, gender stereotypes and how these kids are being influenced by society telling them about gender stereotypes. And so if your child is a male child with long hair, initially the other children may say, like, hey, that's cool. And as they get a little bit older, though, there might be this kind of like, why do you still have long hair? Long hair's for girls. things like that. What else is going on in this chapter? This chapter does talk about the experience of transgender children, of children who, even at an early age, start to recognize that their biological assigned sex may not feel as comfortable as their the way that they think, the way that they feel, the way that they recognize themselves. So there is some research that indicates that for folks who eventually maybe make have surgery to become a transgender male or transgender female, they already at a young age are recognizing that what's out here, what's, in between my legs, doesn't match how I feel about myself. We will see that there's lots of kids this age that are interested in content that relates to the opposite gender. So, for example, little girls saying that they want to grow up to be a big, strong man, or little boys saying that they want to grow up to be a princess. And this is not, there's some parents that say like, oh, well, my kid already thinks that they're gay or that they're trans. And I'm like, no, this is a completely normal part of looking at all of the options that are available to me and deciding which ones fit me. So you may have a 3-year-old male child that likes to play dress up in Disney princess dresses, especially if Disney princess dresses are available to them, if they have sisters or if there's a costume box that has Disney princess dresses. Then they may be interested in wearing dresses. They may just think that dresses are comfortable. They may grow out of it. They may not. So the 3-year-old child that comes to you and says, I feel like I'm part girl and I'm part boy, it's not something to be concerned about. It's part of them learning about themselves through the process of becoming an older child. There's lots of kids that have said things like that do become transgender. There's lots of kids who have said things like that become heterosexual as an adult, that have become homosexual as an adult. This is not, a 3-year-old cross-dressing is not an indicator of what their gender identity or sexual identity will be as an adult. But there are some children that have said, or some adults that have said, I've known I was different ever since I can remember. So is it possible that a child is already recognizing that they do not fit with the gender that has been assigned to them? It is possible. But like I said, keep in mind that for many of these children, it's just them checking stuff out and learning, does this fit me or does this not fit me? What else do I want to talk about from this chapter? Peers, sibling rivalry, types of play, pro-social behavior. We already hit a lot of that stuff. So if you have questions about the personal and social development of our 2 to 6-year-olds, early childhood, I would love to have a discussion about them in the comments. So feel free to comment or ask any questions that you have in the comments, and let's see what else we can learn about from each other. Thanks.